Welcome to the Embracing Brokenness podcast, where our goal is to engage with all of those willing to venture deeper into their transformational journey with Christ. Here's your host and co-founder of Embracing Brokenness Ministries, Steve Adams.
Well, it's good to have you back in the Embracing Brokenness podcast, part 2 with Jay Payleitner. Jay and I talk about quite a bit and have a great time doing it. Just in case you aren't aware of who Jay is, he's written I think it's his 40th book. He's now will complete by September. He's a speaker, but he also was a producer for a number of years in radio, Josh McDowell Radio. He worked with Project Angel Tree and Chuck Colson. So read his bio. There's a lot there. Jay has a wealth of experience and knowledge when it comes to writing, speaking on topics that are near and dear to his heart. And here's a few. For example, and we talked about this in the first podcast, but 365 ways to say I love you to your kids. And there's a number of these little small, easy to read books, but he also wrote a series of books using the number 52, which you also talked about. And this particular one is What If God Wrote Your To-Do List? 52 ways to make the most of every day. So here's another good one that you may want to pick up. I'm in the middle of this, but his latest and most recent book, which really caught my attention because I am a girl dad. Okay, really interesting title for this book. A father-daughter duo discuss truths that impact a girl's heart, mind, and spirit. And he had his daughter, Rayanne, contribute. Wasn't originally intending to do that, but he did, and what a great result. So I really would encourage you to get your hands on this, all dads, even moms. This is so much wisdom and fun and just perspective from both sides of the equation. So welcome back, everyone, to the second part of this two-part series with Jay Payleitner, and I would highly encourage you, if you haven't watched or listened to the first one, please do, and come back here and join us. Here we are, Jay Payleitner.
Well, Jay, so we have all of the different varieties of works that you've done, 39, and another one that I read recently, and I know it's not one of your more recent works, is one that I held up earlier. So, What If God Wrote Your To-Do List? And what I like of this is 52 ways to make the most of every day. And so and this is the one I mentioned that Josh McDowell actually wrote in a foreword. And we were talking about the gospel there a minute ago. And this is what he said, another reminder that I probably won't need to give you. But before you start scrambling to check off items on your personalized to-do list from God, allow me to confirm that you cannot work your way into heaven. And he quotes Ephesians 2:8-9, for it is by grace you have been saved through faith, and this not from yourselves, it's a gift from God, not by works, so that no one can boast. And he went on to say, grace is the unmerited favor of a loving God, wholly demonstrated in the sacrifice of his son. So for any listeners or viewers that do not know who Jesus is, there's the bottom line. And what I love was the fact that Josh mentioned just that, because I happen to be a guy who does to-do lists all the time. Okay. I'm the guy that likes to check off the 10 things that I got done today. But much of my life was about working for recognition, working for significance. And I tell that in my story oftentimes because I was in business for myself many times. And it was all about gaining recognition from the world's view, not from God's view. So I would much rather prefer that God wrote my to-do list than I write my to-do list. And even though this was early in the book, it's still my favorite too, which is number 1, make your bed. Well, there's a saying around here that I coined that said, a well-made bed makes for a well-made life. Now, my wife looks at me like I have 3 heads every time I tell her that, because she could care less. So I'm the guy in the house who usually makes the bed first thing in the morning, which is a little unusual, right? A little unusual. Sometimes I would have to make her in it because I'm usually the first guy up. And you do say about the last person, maybe should be
the last person who gets up makes the bed. These
By the way,
days,
she does do that
yeah,
sometimes.
yeah. Yeah.
So
Tell
me about 52 ways, 52 this, 52 that, right?
Yeah,
and the different
right.
books you've written.
Well, okay. I had my first book was a little allegory that I kind of got published accidentally. Then I did a devotional with Tyndale, which was great fun, about the life verse, 1 year life verse devotional. Then I did a flat rate book for David C. Cook for men, like a men's kind of 40-day devotional. And then I got a agent, and the agent said, "What book do you want to write?" And I said, "I want to write a book for dads."
Okay.
And the backtracking and that would be because I was in a small group, a small Bible study group, and I happened to be about 10, 12 years older than most of the guys in the group. So my kids were teenagers and they had 5-year-olds. So they kept asking me for advice. It's like, oh, I'm pretty good at this. All right. So that's how my passion for dads happened, launched.
Yes.
And so I put a book proposal together. It made it to Harvest House. And the working title was Dad Rules, which is really clever, I thought.
I think.
It's kind of rules for dad.
Yeah, double entendre.
Yeah, dad rules.
That's right.
Or rules for dad or rules from dad, whatever kind of thing. And it had, as every good proposal does, it had 6 or 8 sample chapters, or these short chapters. Because in advertising, I learned to write short, get to the point, and say what you're going to say and get off the stage. Boom. Right. So I wanted to write short chapters. So in the book proposal, well, at the book production meeting, book pub they call it, in many of the publishers, they were kicking around ideas. They said, "Oh, it's time to put out another book for dads. We like the way this guy writes. He's got some radio connections, kind of a platform there, and let's publish this one." And the marketing guy says, "You know what? I can't sell a book, Dad Rules, a book that's not going to jump off the shelves like we needed to." Oh. And I was smart enough that in my book proposal, which was 10 or 12 pages plus the sample chapters, I had one short little section that said alternate book titles. And I just rattled off a few just to let them know that I had flexibility.
That's good. Yeah.
And one of those that I had rattled off by accident was 52 Things Kids Need from a Dad. And that came out. The marketing guy says, "Well, I can't sell Dad Rules, but I could sell this book. I could sell that title."
So they're not real creative on their own, are they?
well, there you go. And this has sold 200,000 copies.
Oh wow,
there you go.
Great,
a great top book title. It does say something about carry your kids' pictures in your wallet, which is ridiculous now because this is like 12 years old, 15 years old, something like 15, maybe 12, 15, 15.
It's on your phone now, right?
It's on your phone now. But the principles still work. Maybe I just lost some sales there because it's old news. It's not old news.
No.
But okay, so this went. And what does the publisher do? And you know this, Steve. What does the publisher do when something works? They do it again. They do some version
over.
So they said, "Hey, Jay, can you Harvest House said, Jay, can you write a book for the same audience? And we'll call it, it's Christian dads, Christian husbands. We'll call it 52 things wives need from their husbands."
Perfect.
And I said, you're gonna I never thought about writing a book on marriage, but you're going to go ahead and send me a check and send me a contract. I can do that. And that book sold too pretty well. Wow. So then they said, "Hey, Jay, can you write a book for wives on what husbands need?" And I say, "Well, how do I know what husbands need?" "Oh, wait, I know what husbands need. It's only 2 things." But
so it's a shorter book, is what you're saying.
Thank you for thinking that.
You had to come up with 50 more. Yeah.
52 things husbands need from their wives. There you go. Bam, bang, zoom. And then they said, "Well, Jay, you know what? You're writing a book for, you know what? What sells these days is a book for dads of daughters because," and so I wrote this book. That sold pretty well. And then they said, "Can you write a book for dads of sons?" So that book's pretty well. So here's the point. Which of these sold twice as many as the other? Oh,
I got to believe the daughters.
Yes, right, of course.
Yeah. Of course.
And that's later on that ended up as this is a different publisher, but Girl Dad, same audience. Okay.
Yeah.
So then I did.
My copy.
Oh, thank you. And then I did the 52 things, ways for couples to connect. So all these sold This one didn't sell. For whatever reason, this has gotten my favorite. There's so much great stuff in here. I've done talks on this, on how to pray for and with your kids, but this didn't sell for whatever reason. And then, thank you for letting me tell these stories, Steve.
Oh, this is perfect. This is exactly what I wanted to do.
Well, it's the way the publishing world works. It beat it to death. And so then I'm starting to do talks to dads, room full of men talking, being a husband, and it was just great, very fulfilling. 100 guys in a room, and they'd come up to me afterwards and say, "Hey, Jay, I'm just having a hard time connecting with my kids, blah 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 blah." And then we talk a little bit. And I say, "Well, how's your faith life? Are you plugged into a good church?" And well, no, that's kind of on hold right now. I'm trying to get right with my kids, and I'm going, well, new friend, sir, I'm going to grab you by the lapels and say, you know what, get with God a little bit. You know, listen, he's got stuff for you that are anything beyond anything I could say. And so they'd shake their head and okay, and go. So then I went back to the publisher, same publisher that did all these books, and said, "Hey, I need a book titled 52 Things You Need to Do for Yourself." And we signed that contract because just about everything I was writing for them was going pretty well. We signed that contract. Great. And then again, back up in the ivory tower, they're talking for a while. They go, you know what? They get me back to me, "Jay, keep writing the book, but we need to find a new title because it just sounds too selfish." And they're kind of right. 52 Things You Need to Do for Yourself sounds too selfish. So I did. I wrote, and I came up with a new title. What if God wrote your bucket list?
And that was a big seller, wasn't it?
And that was a tremendous seller, much better than 52 Things You Need to Do for Yourself.
Yeah, I would think it would be. I like that.
The bucket list just went. And what happens, Steve, when you write a book that sells?
You get to write another one.
Do another one. What if God wrote your to-do list? So
there it is.
So bucket list is kind of stuff you need to kind of at some point in your life, you need to understand that there is a God, that there is a Satan, that there is a plan for us, that there is sin in the world. There's something that you need to grab onto, and I kind of tell stories that you need to come to the garden. Don't put God in a box. Advocate science. Science does matter. Yes. So that was what if God wrote your bucket list. What if God wrote your to-do list? It's stuff you could do today, this week, the stuff that you kind of need to do.
Which I really like that. I like that a lot. Yeah. Not that I wouldn't the other ones. I just ran out of time to read them all. I'd be doing it now still.
And then we, beating that horse till it was completely dead, we did what if God wrote your shopping list, and that didn't sell at all.
Oh, gosh. Not enough people interested. Well, I know for me, I don't like to shop, so that eliminates half the population probably.
There you go. It's just a fun kind of the rhythm of the Christian, the publishing world. Is interesting to know, and they all came with deadlines.
Oh, of course, and that was one of your one of the things that you said. I think in the Lancaster Writers Conference. I think when I first heard you speak, I don't know, it was a year or two ago, that was one of the quotes that you used. Without deadlines, I wouldn't write anything.
I assume you have, Steve, a few writers out there.
Yes.
And that would be the big thing. Either deadline from a publisher, or a deadline from a friend, or a deadline, or just a self-imposed deadline to write 2,000 words a week for
that. Yep. That's the way I did
4 months.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden the book's done.
Yes. And that's how I did. I wrote one over COVID that God hasn't allowed me to release yet, which would be my first, but my wife and I have been working on, it's kind of self-titled, our ministries, Embracing Brokenness Ministries. And the book is called Embracing Brokenness. And it really is a story that God has wanted us to share, because we teach on the subject a lot, going back to Genesis 1, 2, 3, even identity, and returning to the garden, which is possible. I still believe in relationship with Christ today, and even in this world, there's a space for that intimacy to develop.
Say that again. Returning to Eden.
So return. Yeah, the return to Eden. So embracing brokenness is really a story about it. So it's biblically based, obviously, but it's interlaced with our journey. and the brokenness, and how God took that brokenness and flipped the script and developed a much deeper, more intimate relationship with him in ways that I never knew was even possible. For me personally, for my wife, also in her gifts. And and how God uses adversity and brokenness to restore us. It's almost the restoring of the garden in us, the Eden story. And I recently even interviewed Alan Arnold regarding that. He just wrote a book called The Eden Option, which is an amazing, amazing work too. It's so parallel to what we know God has us to bring, but in our teaching and in our speaking and our writing. Now, I'm not where you are yet, but the reason I was on the Lancaster writers conference site with you was just to learn more about preparation for publishing and things like that. But I love what you went on to say. I think it was one of the last slides you put up, and you said God uses it all. And he certainly does. And he's done that for you. I mean, you wrote. Look at this. I mean, you went from A.B. Dick to Michigan Avenue.
Mind blowing.
Like, could you ever look back?
No.
Like, when you went back, would you?
Although I knew I was a writer back then. I knew that was one of my gifts. But all through high school and college, this is before computers, so I would just type, turn in a first draft, with typos and everything, and I get my B+, and that was fine with me. Just stream of consciousness. But when I could finally get some kind of word processing methodology, and go back and rewrite and go back and write a paragraph, and then you go back the next day and you go, and just change it a little bit and polish it. So I'm not sure I could do if I was born 50 years earlier, I could never write something that was publishable.
Yeah, well, they all like doing a lot of this, and then I hate to do that, so I wouldn't either. But you mentioned speaking, because you do that now quite a bit, right? And in different venues. I mean, again, folks, go to bio at jaypayleitner.com, and you'll see all the things that Jay's up to. Also, sign up for his email. Keep following him. Buy his books. Okay, there you go. I plugged it. You say this. It said this jumped out. When you speak, you tend not to do 3-point sermons. This is what you said, right? Thank you for that, by the way. I appreciate that you don't.
Yeah, right.
Which follows your personal motto. You have a personal motto: never boring, possibly life-changing. I saw that on your sign-off on your email. What do you mean by that?
Well, you can't use logic to get somebody into the kingdom of God. You can't use logic. Maybe you could 100 years ago, but you can't anymore. Logic will not turn anybody into a Christ follower.
Well, and that's your story. You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Right. Thank you. And also, you can't bore somebody into the kingdom of God. When I speak, I'm so glad that we're on Zoom now, because if you just listen to our conversation, I would be hesitant. I would like, why is he stopping mid-sentence? But if I'm face to face with an audience, as I stop mid-sentence, I'm face to face with an audience, they can see that I'm struggling or thinking or pointing or asking them to get engaged. So I love speaking. I just 2 weeks ago, I was up at a camp where a churches got together and hired me to come out and speak and give 6 talks. And we were all over the place, man. I was getting stuff out of them. And the organizer said, you know what, Jay, this is a quiet crowd. You're not going to get too much out of them. But we did, because I was in their face a little bit, and I was struggling. Help me with this. And they would help me throw out some ideas. And then I've got, I'm going to give you one of my secrets now. Well, first off, every time I get up in front of the podium, I'll say, hi, I'm Jay. Everybody say, hi, Jay. And all the audience says, hi, Jay. And then by the last talk, they all were doing, hi, Jay.
Hi, Jay, of course. Yeah.
But the other, what was it? I should have written it down. I tell when I'm talking to my dad talk, I tell a story about getting your kid up for waking your kid for lunar eclipse at 2 a.m. on a school night. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
and blah, blah, blah. And the kids, when he goes to school, he might fall asleep the next day at school. And the teacher says, what's going on? Oh, well, my dad got me up last night. And the kids will be jealous, and it's okay. And the teacher says, that's a good dad. But here's my point I'm making here is that I build in some audience reply, because I'll say, how long will that kid remember that? And then I say, forever. And then I'll go, that's from something. That's from a movie. And half the audience will say, Sandlot.
Oh,
I know it's Sandlot. But what I'll do is I'm getting them to interact with me, and then we laugh. That's right, it's Sandlot. So is that deceitful? Is that lying?
I think so. Yeah, but what was it? Oh.
But
anyway, yes. But okay. Here's my takeaway.
Yeah.
Authenticity. Just be yourself.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, yeah.
I mean, that's what we're doing right now. Like, we're just back and forth and coming around. And if people listen to the rest of our off-camera stuff, they'd be like cracking up. So
wait a second, this is being recorded? Are you kidding me? I thought we were just talking.
Oh, I forgot to tell you. But yeah, it is so important to engage your readers, and you do that because I said that I'm into Girl Dad right now, by the way, because I am one. I have one daughter. She's 39 this year.
Oh,
and never too late to read Girl Dad, by the way. And I just think that it's critically important that we, as believers even, right? We're all I said this earlier, we're all in full-time ministry. We all have influence. Every one of us, you have influence on the stage when you speak and when you write. And there's so much God wants to say. We just need to let him filter that out and let the people hear Sandlot, hey, Jay, lunar eclipse in the morning. Those things that just he wants to sink deep into us will make all the difference in our relationships and our family. Because that's what I'm sensing in you is just a real desire to see people, I don't know, transform, change, but also just go deeper, right? Just go deeper into themselves, their family, their relationships. And you do such a fine job at pulling that off. And I can see that in your speak. I heard you. Well, and again, you were at the writers conference. It was more, technical stuff you were talking about because you got writers trying to figure out how to publish a book, but you still interacted that way, right? It was just that interesting sort of way that you just described. So that's your secret. Now we all know, and we're all going to replicate that. Okay, so.
Do you.
Okay,
do what works for you. Never boring. That's a goal.
Yes.
And possibly life-changing. Because that's not up to me. The Holy Spirit's got to do that.
Oh, that's perfect. Yes.
But possibly life-changing if you apply and think and let yourself be a little offended or a little challenged or a little open to a new suggestion or try something new. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to mention just one more because I brought up Girl Dad. How was it? Because you go on here to say that you wrote it, and Rayanne certainly reinforced the fact that you wrote it, but she also had something to say. And meet Rayanne, because I'm gonna bring it up. So she said, "This is most assuredly my father's book." But in the last few pages of each chapter, I'll be giving you a different perspective, not just mine as Jay's daughter, but the experience of my childhood friends who grew up in families different than my own. And she went on to describe a little bit more about that. And she said, just as my dad looks to speak to each one of you and your experiences, like we just said, I am looking to represent all the daughters I can. Mm-hmm. And I love that. How did she do?
She kicked butt on that, I tell you. I knew she was a writer and a thinker, but I didn't know that she could put it together like she did. Wow. Then we did about 40 different radio interviews and podcasts and TV. Oh, was that a delight? Because again, the back and forth thing, that was so fun.
I have an idea for the next time we get together.
But I guess here's the point. Our kids have so many gifts that we don't have. And when you see them blossom, what a privilege that is. And it almost forced the issue. This book happened by accident. I was writing a book for dads of daughters because every 10 years I should do that. And I sent chapters to Rayanne Rayanne was an all-state athlete. She went to West Point. She blew out her knee and left there after 2 years and went to law school in Ireland. So I sent her some sample pages just to do a kind of a fact check. And she wrote me back because we were different time zones. She just typed out, because she typed out some, Dad, what about this and this and this? And it's like, oh my golly. So I asked my publisher, could Rayanne co-write this with me? And long story short, the book was at one point titled Fathers versus Daughters, which is an interesting concept because there was counterpoints, like, the publisher said, well, let's call it Girl Dad. And I'm going to do what a publisher says these days because they know stuff that I don't know. Right. And Girl Dad, there's about 6 books out there called Girl Dad. A few of them are picture books. And actually mine's kind of hard to find because came out later. So ours is hard to find. All that to say, Girl Dad by Jay Payleitner and Rayanne Payleitner. If you're husband and wife, it would be Jay and Rita Payleitner. But when a father and child write a book, they put both last names on there.
Well, that makes sense.
And so the Rayanne really likes that. That it's right there.
There it is.
Payleitner and Payleitner. Very
funny.
I
love that. I love that. It's so good.
Yeah, she likes that too.
That's
really how you spell Payleitner. Oh, that's right. How to spell Payleitner.
Oh, yeah, there it is. There you go, everybody.
Payleitner, P-A-Y.
There it is.
E-I. It's got the old German spelling.
I know.
E-I-T.
Once I did it, by the way, my spell check did it right for me every time I wrote it. So
there you go. Thank you. I have more stories from Girl Dad, especially I didn't know that her friends she had helped her friends through a lot of crud over high school, college in Ireland. And that made it into the book. And it wouldn't, from my perspective, I didn't see all that because she turned out pretty well. So it wasn't like, there's stuff if you're going through some stuff. And again, you got a 39-year-old daughter, Steve. I'm sure she's doing well, but always stuff that we can learn and relate to. You'll bring up old conversations. Did you go through this?
Yes.
The last take on this might be middle school is tougher than you think, Dad. Middle school for kids these days is tougher than you think. Holy cow.
I would not want to.
Boys, girls, the sharp ones, the ugly ones, the ones who are in the inner circle and not. So just love them through that. Don't pester them. Yep. That might be why someone's listened today, is to hear that message.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I remember. I don't really want to remember 7th and 8th grade that as much because there's way too many changes going on. And I was a junior high youth leader for a number of years at our church.
Yeah.
Ooh. So, yeah. And you had many exposures to that, including your own kids. As we kind of wrap here, I would like to give you an opportunity maybe to share if there's a takeaway, if there's something that's specific that you want our audience to ponder, think about from your perspective, either from our time together or your time as an author, speaker, your time in life. I mean, here's a chance for you to maybe, words of wisdom, thoughts, ideas on life in general, whatever you want to call it. Last word to you.
Well, the idea of brokenness is what you come back to over and over again. And one of the times we haven't touched on this yet. I was the jerk in the stands. And I look back on that, it just breaks my heart to think about. I have videos of myself. It's like, who is that guy? And I've apologized to people and they've said, don't worry about it, Jay. We all get that way. And it's like, no, that's not who I wanted to be. And even still learning as my grandsons I have two 10-year-old grandsons. That's another story. One's adopted from China.
It's your do-over then. It's your do-over.
Well, I understand that concept, but it's totally not. I still have reparations to make on in the old days. I'm going to give my son Max credit for holding me accountable.
Wow.
And I'm going to give myself credit for inviting him to hold me accountable. Does that make any sense?
So important. Important.
You have. It's not just if you're broken. If you're broken and have a broken relationship, it's not just you forgiving them, but you have to give them permission to forgive you. And if somebody if somebody takes a step towards you, then take 3 steps towards them. In a relationship, if there's some brokenness, if somebody says, you know what, I just really feel bad, you just take 3 steps forward and say, man, I love you so much. I'm so glad that we can talk again, blah, 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 and take 5 steps. So that suddenly you're there again. Dads, if you're a dad out there and you're obsessing and yelling at your kid, and after a game you're driving your kid home and you say, what were you thinking there? Why'd you missed the cutoff, man, or you missed that tackle? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me, Dad? Because I did that kind of stuff.
Yes.
It's not that it's important, to hit the cutoff man is important. And to get in place to set your feet to make the tackle or to whatever it is. But there are 10,000 things that are more important than that.
Right. Great metaphor for life. That is
yes, right. Of course. In all of life. Yes. Thank you for making that connection. Yes. But don't be the jerk in the stands. And I've written enough things that are like my strategies for getting past that is giving permission to people to correct you, for taking yourself out of the situation, for praying ahead of time. There's all kinds of ways to when you're messing up, when you're breaking other people too. Okay, moving on. Point made.
I think you summed it up really well because, for our listeners, they're in our audience because many are watching by video. There's a ton of life lessons here. But I'm going to encourage anyone and everyone to grab hold of whatever they can of the work that you have done, because I think it's important. You have clearly impacted my life in many ways because I'm working my way through Girl Dad. I just got it not long ago. But you're right. I do have a relationship with my 39-year-old daughter, and who's married, no children, but she lives in Colorado, so I don't get to see her that often. But it is really important, dads, to hear Jay and what he's saying. I know there's plenty of moms on here too, and there's plenty of advice for moms in all of this. Jay, thank you. This has been a great time together. I so appreciate what you have said to us today and all that you've done in the skill set that God's given you to share all this with us. So it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us in this time. Really appreciate it.
Steve, what a privilege. I have so many more stories, as you do too. And I'm glad that this podcast is going for people out there to dig deep, get it right, make mistakes, get it right again.
That's right. Well, I have a feeling we'll be back on doing another one of these together. In the meantime, how would you want people to connect with you?
Sure.
Where can they grab these copies of all these books? Tell us.
Yeah. You know what? jpayleitner.com. I used to have all kinds of different websites and URLs out there. No, just go to first and last name, JayPayleitner.
Spell it right.
And I do I do have a once a week or thereabouts. I send out an email that's you can cancel at any time. It's a reminder, and a laugh and a smile.
Get on the list, because that's why Jay and I are talking, because I was on the list, by the way. So I love his insights in those emails. So for all of you again who joined us by video and audio podcast, check the show notes, because what I'm going to do is I'll put that URL in there. You'll have a way to get a hold of Jay if you want to. And I'm sure you can buy these books almost anywhere, but certainly Amazon for sure. And if you have another place you want to send them too. But other than that, I'm sure that'll do it.
Barnes & Noble still has a few of them on the shelf. And
certainly are. Go to your favorite bookstore.
On websites, the web. You're awesome. Thanks so much, Steve.
Jay, thanks a lot. Appreciate you. God bless.
This was another episode of the Embracing Brokenness podcast. For more information on Embracing Brokenness Ministries, or to subscribe to our blog, podcast, YouTube channel, or engage with us on social media, please visit our website at embracingbrokenness.org. Thanks for joining us.